The river roared with unleashed fury, swollen beyond recognition after 5 days of relentless downpour. Debris crashed against rocks and tumbled downstream, creating a churning death trap of broken trees and jagged stones. Jonas stood on the slippery bank, his weathered hands white-knuckled around a handcrafted fishing spear. Lightning cracked overhead, the sudden blue-white glare revealing a landscape transformed into nightmare. At 63, his once broad frame had withered, his spine curved from decades of survival, but his eyes remained predator-sharp, scanning the chaos for opportunity or threat. Those eyes caught movement, something unnatural caught in the gnarled roots of a fallen tree that stretched halfway across the torrent. A flash of green amid the murky brown water. Not vegetation, something solid. Blood pounded in his ears as recognition dawned. A body, small, thrashing weakly. "Damn this weather," he growled, ramming his spear into the mud and setting his meager catch aside. 20 years alone on this alien world had taught him that dangerous impulses sometimes kept you alive, and sometimes killed you more quickly than caution. Jonas uncoiled the rope from his waist, securing one end to the trunk of a sturdy tree with practiced efficiency. He tested the knot with a sharp tug, then tied the other end around his waist. The current slammed into his legs with shocking force as he waded in, nearly sweeping his feet from under him. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, fighting for each step as the riverbed shifted treacherously beneath him. A massive branch shot past, missing his head by inches. Another struck his thigh with bruising force. The cold numbed his lower body, but he pressed on, his focus narrowed to the green shape ahead. The figure took clearer shape as he drew closer. His breath caught in his throat. A child, a small body tangled in the roots, half submerged and weakening by the second. Unbidden memories surged back. His daughter Emma's laughter, his wife Sarah's touch, both lost in the brutal early days of the failed colony. The grief he'd buried beneath 2 decades of solitude clawed back to the surface, sharp as the day they died. "Not this time," he snarled, driving himself deeper into the churning water. The child belonged to the native species, Verdians, he'd named them for their emerald skin, small, humanoid, with delicate tendrils framing a face that looked eerily human despite its color. A little girl, perhaps 6 or 7 by human equivalents. Her limbs hung limp, but as Jonas touched her cold skin, her eyelids fluttered weakly. Alive, just barely. Freeing her required strength he wasn't certain he still possessed. The current hammered his body relentlessly, his legs going numb from the cold. His arthritic fingers struggled with the tangled roots that both trapped her and had prevented her from being swept away. A fallen branch shot downstream, striking Jonas in the ribs with a crack that told him something had broken. He gasped but maintained his grip on both the child and the roots. "Stay with me," he muttered, though whether to the child or himself he couldn't say. As he worked to free her left arm, the water level surged suddenly. A flash flood from upstream crashed into them, submerging them both completely. Jonas lost his footing, suspended only by his grip on the roots and the rope around his waist. The child's face disappeared beneath the water. Panic fueled his movements as he yanked desperately at the entangled limb, feeling something give way. Either the roots or her shoulder, he couldn't tell which. With a final heave that sent pain screaming through his chest, he tore her free. The current immediately tried to claim them both. Jonas clutched the child to his chest with one arm while his other hand scrambled for the rope, missing twice before his fingers closed around the rough fiber. The river pulled them under for a terrifying moment before he managed to break the surface, coughing and sputtering. The rope cut into his palm as he hauled them toward shore, each movement sending fresh waves of agony through his ribs. The child wasn't moving, not breathing. When his feet finally found purchase on the muddy bank, he collapsed, turning the child onto her side. "Breathe," he commanded, pressing firmly against her small back. "Nothing?" Jonas rolled her onto her back and pressed against her chest. Adapting the human resuscitation technique, he remembered to the smaller Verdian body. 1 compression, 2, 3. "Come on," he growled. "Fight!" He turned her on her side again, striking between her shoulder blades with careful force. Water trickled from her mouth, but still no breath. Back to compressions. 1, 2, 3. "Don't you dare die, not after all this." Another strike to her back, harder this time. Suddenly she convulsed, water gushing from her mouth as she coughed violently. Jonas quickly turned her fully onto her side, supporting her as her body expelled the river water. That's it, he encouraged, his voice rough from exertion. Breathe. Her eyes opened, solid black with no visible iris or pupil, yet somehow expressive in their alien way. And terror registered in them as she focused on his face. I won't hurt you, he said, though he knew she wouldn't understand his language. He raised his empty hands slowly, wincing at the stabbing pain in his side. She tried to move, but whimpered, a sound like wind through hollow reeds. Her left arm hung at an unnatural angle, dislocated or broken in the struggle to free her. A deep gash ran along her leg, and worse, a purple bruise spread across her abdomen, internal bleeding possibly. You're hurt bad, little one. Jonas glanced at the darkening sky, feeling the temperature dropping rapidly. Night on this planet brought predators with keen senses for blood and weakness. The nearest shelter, his hut, was a mile upstream. I need to get you somewhere safe now. He fashioned a sling from his outer shirt and carefully secured her against his chest, ignoring the protest from his broken ribs. She was surprisingly light, her bones more hollow than a human's. Every movement caused her pain, but she made no sound beyond shallow, rapid breathing. The storm intensified as Jonas gathered his meager possessions. Lightning struck a nearby tree, sending sparks showering around them. The girl flinched against his chest, her small hand clutching his rain-soaked undershirt. I know, he murmured. I don't like it either. The trek back to his shelter became a nightmare of mud, fallen branches, and rising water. Twice he nearly lost his footing on the slick terrain. The path he'd walked thousands of times had transformed into treacherous, unfamiliar ground. The weight of the child, light as she was, taxed his injured body. Each breath stabbed through his chest. Still he pushed forward, one excruciating step after another. They were halfway back when a piercing cry split the air, the hunting call of a swamp cat, too close for comfort. Jonas froze, listening. Another call answered from the opposite direction. They were being stalked. Just what we needed, he muttered, drawing his knife. The blade seemed pathetically inadequate against the six-legged predators that could outweigh him by 100 pounds. He increased his pace, adrenaline temporarily overriding pain. The girl sensed his fear, her breathing quickening against his chest. A shape moved through the trees to their left, low-slung, muscular, with glowing amber eyes. Another appeared to the right, cutting off their direct path to the hut. Jonas veered sharply toward a dense thicket of thorny vegetation, a painful passage but one the heavily furred swamp cats avoided. The thorns tore at his exposed skin as he forced a path through, protecting the child as best he could. Blood trickled down his forearms, adding to the scent trail the predators were following. Beyond the thicket lay a steep slope, made treacherous by the rain. Jonas began climbing, using exposed roots and rocks as handholds, his muscles screaming in protest. The swamp cats prowled at the base, growling in frustration, a sound like rocks grinding together. One attempted to follow, only to retreat quickly from the thorns. At the crest of the hill, Jonas spotted his hut through the trees, a small structure on stilts, built from salvaged colony ship components and native materials. Safety, if they could reach it. The descent was even more treacherous than the climb. Halfway down, the rain-soaked earth gave way beneath him. Jonas lost his footing and tumbled, curling his body protectively around the child as they slid down the muddy slope. They crashed through underbrush and over rocks, coming to a jarring halt against a fallen log. Pain exploded through Jonas's body. For a moment, darkness threatened to overtake him. The child's whimper against his chest pulled him back to consciousness. He staggered to his feet, disoriented but still clutching her tightly. The swamp cats had circled around, intercepting them at the bottom of the hill. 3 sets of amber eyes glared through the rain, their muscular bodies tense to spring. Jonas backed away slowly, scanning for escape. His hut stood 100 yards away, an impossible distance with predators blocking the path. A flash of lightning revealed a 4th swamp cat approaching from behind. They were surrounded. Jonas glanced up at a low-hanging branch of a massive tree. Not his first choice, but their only option. He shifted the girl to his back, securing the makeshift sling as best he could. Hold tight, he instructed, demonstrating a gripping motion. Whether she understood or simply acted on instinct, her small arms wrapped around his neck. He took 3 running steps toward the nearest swamp cat, causing it to hesitate in confusion at this unexpected behavior. At the last moment, Jonas veered sharply, using the predator's momentary pause to dash past it toward the tree. The swamp cat recovered quickly, lunging after him with a snarl. Jonas leapt, catching the lowest branch with one hand as the swamp cat's claws raked his leg. Agony shot through his calf, but adrenaline pushed him upward. He hauled himself onto the branch, then immediately began climbing higher as all four predators converged beneath the tree. The largest cat leapt, its claws scrabbling against the trunk, coming terrifyingly close to Jonas's injured leg before falling back. Blood streamed from the deep gashes, but he couldn't stop to address the wound. He climbed higher, putting distance between them and the predators. When they reached a thick branch 20 feet up, Jonas paused to catch his breath. The swamp cats circled below, occasionally leaping futilely toward them. They wouldn't leave, not with the scent of blood driving their hunger. And the tree, while temporarily safe, was exposed to the worsening storm. The child trembled against his back, whether from cold, fear, or injury, he couldn't tell. They couldn't stay here. Jonas studied their surroundings. His hut remained visible through the trees, but the ground route was blocked by the swamp cats. Then he noticed something. The massive branch they sat on extended toward a neighboring tree, its limbs intertwining with those of several other giants, a potential pathway above the predators. "Hold tighter," he told the girl, securing her position. Moving with painful slowness, Jonas began inching along the branch. It dipped alarmingly under their weight, but held. When they reached the thinner section, he had to balance carefully, arms outstretched. One slip would send them crashing to the waiting predators below. The branch connected with its neighbor from the adjacent tree. Jonas made the transition, relief flooding through him as they moved onto the sturdier limb. Tree by tree, branch by branch, they made their way closer to his hut, the swamp cats following below, growling in frustration. The final gap was the most challenging, a 6-foot jump to a lower branch of the last tree, which stood near his elevated hut. Jonas's strength was failing, his wounded leg barely functional, his broken ribs sending spasms of pain with each breath. "Last one," he wheezed to the child, "then home." He backed up as far as he dared on the branch, then launched himself forward. For a terrible moment, they hung in empty air. Then his hands connected with the target branch. His wounded leg failed to find purchase, leaving him dangling one-handed with the child on his back. The branch creaked ominously. With a final surge of desperate strength, Jonas swung his good leg up and over, stabilizing their position. They'd made it to the last tree. The ladder to his hut's elevated entrance loomed just 15 feet away, an easy distance under normal circumstances, now a formidable challenge. The swamp cats gathered beneath the tree, their patience unending. Jonas descended carefully until he reached the lowest stable branch, still 10 feet above the ground. Too high to jump safely in his condition, but close enough to the hut that he might make a run for it. He studied the predators' positions, noting that 3 had settled directly in the path to the hut, while the 4th paced restlessly to one side. That created a potential opening. Jonas broke off a large branch and hurled it as far as he could in the opposite direction of the hut. The noise drew the attention of 2 swamp cats, who loped toward the disturbance. Not as many as he'd hoped, but it would have to do. "Now or never," he muttered, shifting the girl to his front where he could protect her better. He dropped from the branch, landing awkwardly on his good leg. Pain shot through his injured calf as it took partial weight, but he was moving before the predators could react, sprinting with desperate speed toward the ladder. The closest swamp cat recovered quickly, lunging after him with terrifying speed. Jonas reached the ladder 2 steps ahead of the predator, scrambling upward as jaws snapped at his heels. The second cat leapt, claws catching his already mangled calf, tearing flesh. Jonas kicked desperately, dislodging the predator more by luck than strength. With the last of his energy, he hauled them onto the platform and through the hut's door, slamming it shut behind them. The swamp cat snarled and circled below, occasionally leaping futilely toward the elevated structure. Inside, he gently laid the girl on his sleeping pallet. In the light of his solar lamp, her injuries looked even worse than he'd feared. The left arm was definitely dislocated at the shoulder. The gash on her leg pulsed with each heartbeat, dangerously deep. The abdominal bruising had spread, darkening to an alarming shade. Jonas forced himself to deal with his own injuries first. He would be no help to her if he passed out from blood loss. The swamp cat's claws had left 4 deep parallel gashes from knee to ankle. He disinfected the wounds with a sharp-smelling liquid from his dwindling medical supplies, biting back a scream as the antiseptic burned through shredded flesh. Crude stitches closed the worst sections, followed by tight bandaging. His broken ribs could only be bound, which he did with practiced efficiency, each movement a study in controlled agony. Only when he had addressed his own critical injuries did he turn his full attention to the child. She watched his every movement with those black eyes, consciousness returning, but bringing fear with it. When he approached with the antiseptic, she tried to scramble away, but weakness and pain kept her in place. "This is going to hurt," he warned, preparing the antiseptic. He demonstrated on a cut on his own arm first, wincing at the burn. "See? Medicine. Help." When the antiseptic touched her leg wound, her entire body went rigid, but not a sound escaped her lips. Tears welled in those alien eyes, rolling down green cheeks in silver streaks. "Brave girl," Jonas murmured, applying a healing salve and bandaging the wound. The dislocated shoulder came next. This would be the worst pain, but leaving it would cause permanent damage. He positioned himself carefully, finding the right grip despite his own injuries. "This will hurt worse," he warned, finding the joint with his fingers, "but it needs to be done." He counted silently to 3, then pulled and rotated in one quick motion. This time she couldn't contain her cry, a high, trilling sound unlike any human vocalization. It pierced through him like a blade. The joint slid back into place with an audible pop. Working quickly, he fashioned a sling for her arm from a clean shirt, securing it against her body to prevent movement. The internal injuries worried him most, beyond his limited medical capabilities. He prepared a broth with natural antibiotics he'd discovered over the years, adding extra nutrients from his dwindling medical supplies. Outside, the swamp cats still prowled, their occasional growls audible over the storm. Other predators would join them soon, drawn by the scent of blood and the promise of easy prey. "You're safe here," Jonas assured her, securing the shutters over his windows. "Nothing gets in unless I allow it." When he offered the broth, she sniffed it suspiciously before taking a small sip. Her eyes widened slightly, whether in surprise or disgust he couldn't tell, but she drank it all, clearly understanding its medicinal purpose. The storm raged through the night. Jonas dozed fitfully in his chair, waking at every sound, his own injuries throbbing in time with the thunder. Twice he checked the girl's breathing, concerned by its shallow rhythm. By morning, her fever had spiked dangerously. The wound on her leg showed angry red streaks extending outward like crimson fingers, infection setting in despite the antiseptic. Her skin had taken on a sickly yellowish tinge that contrasted alarmingly with its natural emerald hue. "Fight it," Jonas urged, placing a cool cloth on her forehead. She whimpered in response, words in her native tongue spilling out in a delirious stream. Her good hand clutched at phantoms in the air, battling demons only she could see. Jonas rummaged through his limited supplies, panic rising as he realized how ill-equipped he was to fight a serious infection. The antiseptic hadn't been enough. He needed something stronger, something the Verdians themselves would use. He recalled a hunting party he'd observed years ago when one of their members had been gored by a territorial herbivore. The Verdian healer had applied a poultice of plants with distinctive purple-veined leaves. Jonas had noted the location, cataloging useful knowledge as he always did, never imagining he'd need it for a Verdian child in his care. "I have to leave you for a little while," he told the delirious girl, tucking the blankets around her. "Just hold on." The rain had lessened to a steady drizzle, but the ground had transformed into treacherous mud that sucked at his boots with each step. His injured leg threatened to buckle with every movement, the crude stitches pulling against swollen flesh. The swamp cats had finally departed with the dawn, but other dangers lurked in the forest. Jonas moved as quickly as his injuries allowed, following a stream to the marshy area where he'd seen the medicinal plants growing. Every minute away from the child felt like abandonment, but he had no choice. He found the plants after an hour's desperate searching, a cluster of them growing at the marsh's edge, their purple veins pulsing slightly as if with their own heartbeat. Jonas harvested several handfuls, careful to include the roots where the most potent compounds would be concentrated. The return journey took longer, his strength flagging as the adrenaline ebbed. Twice he had to stop, leaning against trees as waves of pain radiated from his leg and ribs. The third time, his legs simply gave out, sending him to his knees in the mud. "Not now," he growled, forcing himself back up. She needs you. He was halfway back when he heard it, a low, rumbling growl from the undergrowth ahead. Not a swamp cat. Something worse. Jonas froze, his hand moving slowly to the knife at his belt. The brush parted, revealing a massive reptilian head larger than Jonas's torso. A ridge of bony plates ran from its snout to where its neck disappeared into the vegetation. Amber eyes with vertical pupils fixed on him with predatory focus. A land serpent, the apex predator of this region, rarely seen but universally feared. Jonas remained perfectly still. Running was impossible with his injured leg. Fighting would be suicide. His only hope lay in the serpent's territorial nature. They often warned intruders before attacking. The massive head rose higher, giving Jonas his first view of the creature's true size. At least 20 feet long, its scaled body thicker than a man's waist. It opened its mouth in warning, revealing rows of serrated teeth and emitting a hissing roar that vibrated the air. With agonizing slowness, Jonas began to back away, careful to make no sudden movements. The serpent watched, its head weaving slightly from side to side. 3 steps, 4, 5. Jonas felt his back press against a tree trunk. No more retreat possible. The serpent advanced, closing half the distance between them with frightening speed. Jonas clutched his knife, knowing it would be useless against the armored hide, but unwilling to die without resistance. As the creature tensed for its final lunge, a piercing whistle cut through the forest, followed by a solid thunk. An arrow protruded suddenly from the ground beside the serpent's head. Not a miss, a warning shot. The serpent's head swiveled toward the new threat. Another whistle, another arrow, this one embedding itself in the ground on the opposite side of the massive reptile. The message was clear: retreat or be attacked from multiple directions. The land serpent hissed in rage but slithered backward into the undergrowth, disappearing with surprising speed for something so large. Jonas released the breath he'd been holding, his knees threatening to buckle from relief. 3 figures emerged from the forest, Verdians armed with bows. Their skin bore the distinctive patterned scarification of adults, and they moved with the silent confidence of experienced hunters. They approached cautiously, arrows nocked but pointed downward. Human, one said in heavily accented English, clearly surprised. Alone, far from Colony Place. Jonas stared in shock. In 20 years, he'd had only fleeting encounters with Verdians, most ending with them retreating once they spotted him. None had ever spoken to him. Colony gone, he managed, his voice rough. Many years, just me now. The hunters exchanged glances, communicating silently. The one who had spoken gestured to Jonas's injured leg and the plants clutched in his hand. Healing plants. For who? Child, Jonas said, deciding on honesty was his only option. Verdian child, found in river, very sick. Their postures changed instantly, tension replacing cautious curiosity. The speaker raised his bow slightly. Where child now? My shelter. Trying to save her. Jonas pointed in the direction of his hut. She's dying, need these plants. Another silent exchange between the hunters. Then the speaker lowered his bow completely. Show us. The return to his hut took less time with the hunter's assistance. One supported Jonas when his leg threatened to give out, while another scouted ahead for dangers. They reached the elevated structure as the sun broke through the clouds. Inside, the child lay exactly as Jonas had left her, her condition visibly worse. Her breathing had become shallow and rapid, her skin hot to the touch. The infection was winning. The hunters approached the sleeping pallet, examining the girl with obvious concern. The leader spoke rapid words in the Verdian language, his tone urgent. She clan child, he told Jonas. Lost in great storm, many search. Can you help her? Jonas asked, holding out the medicinal plants. I know these work, but not how to prepare them properly. The hunter nodded, taking the plants. Need water, fire, clean cloth. Jonas provided what was needed, then watched as the hunters worked with practiced efficiency. They mashed the roots into a paste, adding specific parts of the leaves and heating the mixture to a precise temperature. The resulting poultice gave off a sharp, astringent odor. Remove old covering, the lead hunter instructed, gesturing to the bandage on the girl's leg. Jonas complied, wincing at the angry wound beneath. The infection had visibly spread, the skin around it swollen and hot to the touch. The hunter applied the poultice generously, covering the entire affected area before wrapping it in a clean cloth. He prepared a second mixture, this one liquid, and carefully dribbled it between the child's lips. Strong medicine, he explained. Fight blood poison. One of the other hunters had been examining the child's splinted arm and the bruising on her abdomen. He spoke to his leader in rapid Verdian, gesturing to the injuries. He says you set bone joint well, the leader translated. Inside hurt needs time, no bleeding now, good sign. Jonas nodded, relief washing through him. Will she live? The hunter studied the child for a long moment. If fever breaks by next, son, yes. If not, he didn't need to finish. What's her name? Jonas asked. Maya, the hunter replied. Daughter of Speaker Lenara, Blue Valley clan. A leader's child? The hunter nodded. Important family, many search. You should take her to her people, Jonas said, though the thought of parting with the child, Maya, brought an unexpected pang. They'll have better medicines, healers. Too far, the hunter said, shaking his head. 2 days' journey. She too weak now. He pointed to Jonas's injured leg. You need healing too. Before Jonas could protest, one of the other hunters knelt beside him, examining the swamp cat gashes. Without asking permission, he began applying a different poultice to the wounds, one that immediately brought blessed numbing relief. Why help me? Jonas asked the leader, wincing as the hunter rewrapped his leg. You saved clan child, the leader replied simply. Risk life for her. Enemy would not do this. I'm not your enemy, Jonas said quietly. We see this now. The leader studied him with those inscrutable black eyes. I am Terrell, hunter guard of Blue Valley clan. Jonas, he replied, last of the Earth colony. Terrell nodded. We stay until dark, help with child, then must return, bring news. Will others come for her? When she can travel, 3, 4 days of healing good. Terrell gestured to Maya. You care for her until then? Jonas looked at the small green figure on his sleeping pallet. Despite the danger and pain of the rescue, despite his own injuries, he felt no regret. Only a fierce protectiveness he'd thought long dead. Yes, he said firmly, I'll care for her. Terrell smiled, a strange expression on the alien face, but unmistakable. Good. We bring more medicine tomorrow, and food. He glanced around the sparse hut. You live long alone. Hard life. It's been quiet, Jonas acknowledged, the understatement drawing a surprised laugh from the hunter. The Verdians stayed until evening, showing Jonas how to prepare the medicines, when to apply them, what signs of improvement or deterioration to watch for. When they left, promising to return the following day, Jonas felt oddly bereft. After 20 years of solitude, a few hours of company, even alien company, had reawakened his hunger for connection. That night, as Maya's fever raged, Jonas sat beside her, replacing the cooling cloths on her forehead, dribbling water and medicine between her lips. When she seemed able to swallow, he spoke to her constantly, not caring that she couldn't understand. His voice seemed to calm her during the worst fever dreams. You'll get through this, he told her. You're stronger than you look, and tomorrow your people will bring better medicine. When she thrashed in the grip of nightmares, calling out in her musical language, Jonas held her good hand and sang old earth songs his wife had once sung to their daughter, lullabies from a world Maya would never see, in a language she didn't understand, yet somehow the melodies soothed her. On the second night, her fever peaked. Jonas feared he would lose her, watching helplessly as she struggled for each breath. He reapplied the poultice, bathed her with cool water, and waited. Nothing more could be done. Stay with me, he pleaded, when her breathing became so shallow it was barely perceptible. You've come too far to give up now. Whether from the medicines, her own resilience, or some combination of both, Maya survived the crisis. By dawn, her fever had broken, leaving her exhausted but cooler to the touch. Jonas himself was near collapse, having barely slept for 3 days. When Terrell and his hunters returned with fresh supplies, they found both Jonas and Maya sleeping. The human slumped in his chair, one hand still holding the child's as if to anchor her to life. For 4 days, the Verdian hunters came daily, bringing medicines and food, checking on Maya's progress and Jonas's leg. The infection in her wound gradually receded, and color returned to her skin. Jonas's leg healed more slowly, the deep gashes from the swamp cat requiring constant attention to prevent their own infection. On the 5th day, Maya fully regained consciousness. Her eyes opened, clear and alert for the first time since the river. She stared at Jonas with obvious confusion, then at the unfamiliar surroundings of the hut. You're safe, Jonas said gently, though he knew she wouldn't understand. I found you in the river. You've been very sick. She spoke, a musical phrase that sounded like a question, her voice raspy from days without proper use. Here, drink first, Jonas said, holding a cup of water to her lips. She drank greedily, spilling some down her chin in her eagerness. Slowly, he cautioned, supporting her head. There's plenty more. When she'd had her fill, she spoke again, gesturing around the hut with a weak wave of her hand. I don't understand your words yet, Jonas admitted, but we'll figure something out. He pointed to various objects in the hut, naming them in English. Table, chair, water, food. Then he gestured to her. Maya. Her expression brightened with recognition at her name, a spark returning to those alien eyes. She pointed to the water cup. Water, she repeated, the word awkward on her tongue but recognizable. That's right, Jonas encouraged, a genuine smile breaking through his exhaustion. Water. She touched the cup again, then pointed to her mouth and made a drinking motion. Water, she repeated, more confidently this time. Jonas filled the cup again and handed it to her. Yes, water. Drink the water. Maya managed to hold the cup herself, though her hands trembled with weakness. After drinking, she pointed to Jonas. Jonas, she said carefully. Yes, he exclaimed, surprised at how pleased he felt hearing his name from her lips. I'm Jonas. For the next hour, they continued this simple exchange, Maya pointing to objects and Jonas naming them. Her quick intelligence was evident in how rapidly she absorbed the new vocabulary, repeating words with increasing accuracy. By the time exhaustion overtook her again, she had mastered 10 basic nouns and seemed eager for more. As she drifted back to sleep, Jonas realized something had fundamentally changed. The desperate rescue of a dying alien child had transformed into something else entirely, a relationship, a connection, perhaps even the beginnings of understanding between two radically different beings. For the first time in 20 years, Jonas wasn't merely surviving. He was teaching, sharing, communicating, actions that belonged to a social creature, not a solitary exile. The realization was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. As the days passed, Maya's recovery accelerated. The resilience of youth, combined with her species' natural healing capabilities, worked in her favor. By the second week, she could hobble around the hut with a crutch Jonas had fashioned from a forked branch. Her curiosity was boundless, her small green fingers touching everything within reach, her black eyes absorbing every detail of his strange human dwelling. Jonas watched her explorations with a mixture of amusement and melancholy. Her wonder at simple objects, a metal cooking pot, a handmade wooden spoon, the tattered star charts he'd pinned to one wall, reminded him of his daughter's curiosity. Emma had been only 4 when the colony ship landed, when the sickness took her. Maya seemed approximately the same developmental age, though Jonas had no reference for Verdian maturation rates. The language barrier dissolved more rapidly than Jonas would have thought possible. Maya's capacity for language astonished him. She absorbed new words daily, testing them with growing confidence. By the end of the first month, she could form basic sentences, asking for food or water, naming objects around the hut, even describing simple actions. Jonas, what this? Became her most frequent phrase, accompanied by a pointed finger and inquisitive tilt of her head. That's a compass, he explained one afternoon, showing her the battered instrument. It tells direction, north, south, east, west. Direction, she repeated carefully, then added a trilling Verdian word that must have been her language's equivalent. That's right, direction. He demonstrated how the needle always pointed north, no matter how he turned the compass. Maya's eyes widened with delight at the seemingly magical device. How it works? She asked, her syntax still developing. Jonas hesitated, unsure how to explain magnetism to someone just learning basic vocabulary. It feels the world, he said finally, tapping the glass covering the needle. The world pulls it to show north. Maya nodded sagely as if this made perfect sense. World has power, she said. Yes, Jonas agreed, surprised by her intuitive leap. The world has power. She pointed to various items around the hut. This power, this power. No, different kinds of power, Jonas attempted to explain, realizing he'd opened a complex subject. The compass uses invisible power, like, he searched for an analogy she might understand. Like wind, you can't see wind, but you can see what it does. Maya considered this, her brow furrowing in concentration. Then she grinned, a startlingly human expression on her alien features. Like spirit songs, cannot see, But here, spirit songs, she made an expansive gesture. Trees sing when wind comes. Verdians say spirits and trees speak to each other. Jonas nodded, understanding. The singing forest, I've heard those sounds. You understand? Maya clapped her hands together in delight. Spirit songs! These exchanges became the rhythm of their days. Maya's questions driving Jonas to explain concepts he hadn't verbalized in decades, forcing him to remember a world beyond his solitary existence. He found himself recalling details of Earth he'd thought long forgotten. The smell of rain on asphalt, the taste of foods impossible to recreate here, the sound of ocean waves breaking on shore. Maya absorbed it all, her vocabulary expanding exponentially. Her native language began to make more sense to Jonas as well. He couldn't reproduce the complex harmonic tones, but he recognized patterns, associating certain sounds with specific meanings. Her physical recovery progressed more gradually. The broken arm remained splinted, though she exercised it daily per Jonas's instructions. She favored her injured leg heavily at first, but within 6 weeks could walk without the crutch for short distances. The abdominal bruising gradually faded from purple to a yellowish green that almost matched her skin tone, though Jonas worried about permanent internal damage. Jonas, teach Hunt, she requested one clear morning, pointing to his spear with her good arm. He hesitated. Her injuries were healing well, but she remained far from full strength. Soon, first more strength. She frowned, a remarkably human expression on her alien features. Maya strong. To demonstrate, she attempted to lift his heaviest cooking pot with her healed arm. It wobbled dangerously before she set it down, her face flushed a deeper green with exertion. Very impressive, Jonas said, hiding his smile. But hunting requires patience too. Watch first, then do. That afternoon, he took her to a shallow part of the river to observe his fishing technique. The spot was far upstream from where he'd found her, the water calmer and clearer here. She perched on a sun-warmed rock, eyes intent on his every move as he waded knee-deep into the current. Jonas demonstrated how to hold the spear, how to account for light refraction when aiming at underwater targets, how to stand to minimize disturbing the water. Maya watched with total concentration, asking occasional questions that showed her quick understanding of the principles involved. When he speared a fat river crawler, her excitement bubbled over in a stream of musical Verdian words. What your people call this? He asked, holding up the squirming, crab-like creature with its multiple legs and armored carapace. She made a sound like water bubbling over stones. I'll stick with river crawler, Jonas decided, making her laugh, a sound like small bells chiming. On their way back to the hut, Maya's steps slowed. She stared into the dense forest that bordered the river path, her head cocked as if listening. What is it? Jonas asked, immediately alert for danger. Someone watching, she whispered, her hand finding his. Jonas scanned the tree line, seeing nothing unusual. Animal or person? Person, she replied with certainty. My people. Jonas's heart rate accelerated. In 20 years, he'd had only a handful of distant encounters with Verdians, most ending with them retreating rapidly once they spotted him. He'd always respected their apparent desire for separation. Where? He asked, trying to sound calm for Maya's sake. She pointed to a dense thicket about 50 yards away. There, 2 hunters. Jonas raised an empty hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. We mean no harm, he called out, though he doubted they would understand. After a tense moment, 2 figures emerged from the undergrowth. Tall, lean Verdians, with skin a darker green than Maya's, carrying bows with arrows nocked but pointed downward. Their faces bore intricate patterns of raised tissue that Jonas had noticed on adult Verdians, some form of cultural scarification or perhaps a natural feature of maturation. Maya stepped forward, calling out in her native tongue. The hunters exchanged glances, but didn't respond. Jonas noticed their attention fixed not on Maya but on him, their posture tense with obvious distrust. Tell them I found you injured, Jonas suggested quietly. Tell them I'm helping you. Maya spoke again, gesturing toward Jonas and then to her splinted arm. The hunters listened impassively, their expressions unreadable to Jonas's human perception. One of them finally responded, a short phrase that made Maya's shoulders slump. What did they say? Jonas asked. They not believe, she replied. Think you took me prisoner. Jonas's stomach tightened. This was exactly the kind of misunderstanding he'd feared for years, one reason he'd kept his distance from the Verdians. Ask them to come closer, see you're not restrained. Maya relayed this, but the hunters remained where they were. The taller one spoke again, his tone sharp. They say I come with them now, Maya translated. Say they take me home. Jonas felt a confusing mix of emotions. Relief that Maya might be reunited with her people sooner than expected, but also concern about her still healing injuries and most surprisingly a selfish desire not to lose her companionship so soon. Tell them you're still healing, Jonas said. Tell them you'll go home when you're stronger. After Maya translated, the hunters conferred briefly. The shorter one nocked an arrow, drawing the bow halfway, not aiming directly at Jonas but making the implied threat clear. They say I must come, Maya whispered. Say you dangerous. Jonas slowly set down his fishing spear and raised both hands. I won't stop you, he told her. If you want to go with them, go, but you're welcome to stay until you're fully healed. Maya looked from Jonas to the hunters and back, clearly torn. After a moment of internal struggle, she made her decision. Stepping forward, she addressed the hunters in a stream of Verdian speech, her tone surprisingly authoritative for one so young. The hunters appeared taken aback by whatever she said. They exchanged glances again, and the one with the drawn bow slowly lowered his weapon. What did you tell them? Jonas asked. I say you save me from river. Fix my broken body. Teach me to speak your words. I say you good person, not dangerous. She lifted her chin. I say I stay until arm heals, then return to clan with proper thanks. Jonas blinked in surprise. And they accepted that? They not happy, Maya admitted, but I am daughter of clan speaker. They listen. This was new information. Your father is a leader? Maya nodded. Mother too, both speakers. The hunters retreated to the forest edge but didn't leave. Instead, they settled into position where they could observe the path back to Jonas's hut. They watch us go home, Maya explained. Make sure I'm safe. Will they try to take you when I'm sleeping? She shook her head confidently. I told them no, they obey, mostly. She glanced at the barely visible hunters, but they report to clan. Others might come. Others less willing to listen? Maybe, she acknowledged. Ghost Hunter clan hate all outsiders. If they learn of you, she didn't need to finish. Jonas understood the implications well enough. His peaceful existence might soon become considerably more complicated. That evening, as they ate their catch, Maya grew unusually quiet. She traced patterns on the wooden floor with her finger, her expression distant. What's wrong? Jonas asked. She looked up, those black eyes somehow conveying deep sadness. Maya, remember, family. She placed her hand over her heart. Mother, father, brother. Jonas's throat tightened. Of course she had a family, people who were surely searching for her, grieving her. Your home, where is it? She pointed southeast. Many day walk, beyond big trees, near mountain. The Spine Mountains. Jonas knew them well, had mapped part of the range during his early explorations. They marked the territory where he'd occasionally observed Verdian hunting parties, though he'd always kept his distance. When you're stronger, he said carefully, I can help you find your way back. Maya's face brightened momentarily, then clouded again. Jonas come too? The simple question carried weight. He'd spent 20 years avoiding the Verdians, believing they would fear or reject him as an alien intruder. But Maya's presence had changed everything. We'll see, he replied noncommittally. That night, Jonas couldn't sleep. He stood at the window, gazing at the unfamiliar stars. The constellations had become friends during his solitude, silent companions in his exile. Now, for the first time in decades, he contemplated leaving his sanctuary. A sharp pain in his chest made him wince, not his healing ribs, but something deeper. He'd been ignoring the symptoms for months, the shortness of breath, the occasional dizziness. The pain that came without warning and lingered longer each time. At 63, with 2 decades of harsh survival behind him and no medical care beyond basic first aid, his body was failing. How long did he have? Months, perhaps. A year at most. Long enough to return Maya to her people if they started soon. Long enough to ensure she wouldn't be alone when his time came. Decision made, he began preparations for a journey he wasn't certain his aging body could complete. The forest darkened as they ventured deeper. Massive trees with purple-hued bark stretched toward the sky, their dense canopy blocking much of the sunlight. The underbrush thinned in the perpetual twilight beneath, making travel easier but limiting visibility. Jonas moved cautiously, his hand never far from the knife at his belt. 5 days into their journey, and they were entering territory he'd rarely explored. Maya walked beside him, no longer needing the crutch, but still favoring her once-injured leg on difficult terrain. These trees sing at night, she explained, touching one of the massive trunks. Her English had improved remarkably over the 3 months since he'd found her. Wind makes them speak to each other. Your people live near here? She shook her head. Not yet. Beyond the singing forest is the Great Plain. Then the mountains. My village sits in the valley between tall peaks. Jonas consulted his handmade map, meticulously created over years of exploration. According to his calculations, they were at least another week's journey from the mountain range. His chest tightened at the thought, but not from emotion. His heart fluttered erratically, a sensation that had been occurring with increasing frequency. He pressed a hand to his sternum, trying to will the organ back into proper rhythm. Maya watched him with concern. Jonas hurt? She asked, placing her small hand next to his. Just tired, he lied, forcing a smile. Old bones don't like long walks. She didn't appear convinced, but didn't press further. Her perception was unnervingly acute. She missed little. They continued through the forest, Jonas setting a pace that balanced urgency with caution. The sooner they reached her village, the better his chances of making it back to his hut afterward. Though increasingly he wondered if he would or should attempt the return journey at all. A distant howl froze them both. Jonas immediately pulled Maya behind him, drawing his knife. Shadow Maw, she whispered, her small hand clutching his tattered jacket. Jonas had encountered the predators before. Wolf-like creatures with 6 legs and double-hinged jaws that could snap a man's arm in one bite. They typically hunted in packs of 3 to 5. How many? He asked, scanning the dim forest. Sounds like 3. 2 females, 1 male. Her hearing was far more acute than his, another advantage of her species. The howl came again, closer. Jonas pointed to a massive tree with a hollow at its base. Hide there. I'll lead them away. No, Maya protested. They too fast, too strong. I've dealt with their kind before, Jonas assured her, though never 3 at once. She shook her head vehemently. Up, she insisted, pointing to the branches above. They cannot climb. It made sense. With their low-slung bodies and multiple legs adapted for speed, the shadow maws would struggle with vertical ascent. Jonas eyed the lowest branch, at least 10 feet up and thick as his thigh. I'll boost you, he said, kneeling and cupping his hands. Maya hesitated. Together. I'm too heavy for you to lift. Another howl, much closer. No more time to argue. Jonas hoisted Maya up to the lowest branch. She scrambled onto it with the natural agility of her species, then immediately turned and extended her hand down to him. Jump, Jonas! He backed up several paces, then ran and leapt as high as his aging body would allow. His fingers just brushed the rough bark of the branch. Not enough. He landed heavily, his right ankle twisting beneath him. Pain shot up his leg. He bit back a curse. Maya's face contorted with fear. Again, please. The underbrush rustled at the edge of his vision. No time for another attempt. Jonas drew his knife and the small axe from his pack, positioning himself with his back to the tree. Stay up there, he ordered, no matter what happens. The first shadow maw emerged from the undergrowth, lean, muscular, with mottled gray-green fur that helped it blend with the forest floor. Its 6 legs moved with eerie coordination, and its mouth gaped to reveal rows of serrated teeth. The other 2 flanked it, spreading out to surround their prey. Jonas had killed one before years ago, when it attacked him while he was sleeping. That had been with the element of surprise and a spear. Now, injured and armed only with short-range weapons, his chances were slim. The lead predator, the male, judging by its larger size, launched itself at him without warning. Jonas swung his axe in a wide arc, catching the creature across its elongated snout. It yelped, a sound like tearing metal, and retreated momentarily. The females used the distraction to attack from both sides. Jonas managed to slash one with his knife, but the other clamped its jaws around his pack, tearing it from his shoulders. The force of the attack spun him around, and he fell to one knee, his injured ankle unable to support his weight. Above, Maya cried out in his defense, hurling broken branches at the predators. They hardly noticed. The male shadow maw, recovered from the axe blow, circled back. Blood dripped from its wounded snout, but its eyes, yellow with vertical pupils, remained fixed on Jonas with cold intelligence. It knew he was weakened. As it gathered itself for another lunge, Jonas prepared for what would likely be his final stand. 20 years of survival on this hostile planet, only to die protecting an alien child he'd known for mere months. Somehow it felt right. The shadow maw leapt. Jonas raised his weapons. A high-pitched whistle cut through the air, followed by a meaty thunk. The predator crashed to the ground mid-jump, a wooden shaft protruding from its eye. It thrashed briefly, then went still. The female shadow maws hesitated, growling. Two more whistles, two more shafts, one striking true in a female's throat, the other grazing the second female's shoulder. The wounded predator snarled and retreated into the underbrush, disappearing from sight. Jonas turned toward the source of the unexpected salvation. Three figures emerged from the shadows, each carrying a bow. Verdians, taller than Maya, their green skin marked with intricate patterns of raised tissue that must have been some form of cultural scarification or natural maturation. Maya called down from her perch, her voice filled with excitement and relief. The lead Verdian responded, then all three approached cautiously, weapons still ready. The leader, a female with elaborate markings across her forehead, addressed Jonas in the musical Verdian language. When he shook his head to indicate he didn't understand, she switched to halting, heavily accented English. "You human with child, why?" Jonas slowly sheathed his knife, wincing as he tried to put weight on his injured ankle. "I found her, in river. Hurt. I healed her, taking her home." The Verdian's black eyes narrowed suspiciously. She called up to Maya, who responded with a rapid stream of explanation. The three hunters listened intently, occasionally glancing at Jonas with expressions he couldn't read. When Maya finished, the leader turned back to Jonas. "She says you saved her life, cared for her. This true?" "Yes." "Why?" The simple question caught him off guard. Why indeed? What had compelled him to risk his life for an alien child, to care for her, to undertake this dangerous journey? "Because she needed help," he said finally, "and I could give it." The leader studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. She gave an order to her companions. One knocked another arrow and disappeared into the underbrush, presumably to track the wounded shadow maw. The other began field dressing the dead predators, valuable meat and hide that wouldn't be wasted. "I am Sarai," the leader said, slinging her bow across her back. "Hunter of the Blue Valley clan. Maya is of our clan. Her family believes her dead." Maya scrambled down from the branch and ran to Sarai, who placed a hand gently on the child's head in what seemed a gesture of blessing or acknowledgement. They exchanged words too quick for Jonas to catch. "She says you teach her to fish," Sarai said, a note of surprise in her voice. "To speak your words." Jonas nodded. "She's a quick learner." "And you journey to return her? Though you are—" She gestured at his gray hair, his lined face. "Old one. I'm not that decrepit," Jonas replied with a wry smile, though his throbbing ankle argued otherwise. Sarai made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Come, our camp near. For night you rest with us. Tomorrow we go to village together." As the Verdian hunter helped him limp through the forest, Maya bouncing excitedly ahead, Jonas felt a strange mixture of emotions. Relief that she would soon be reunited with her family. Satisfaction at having kept his promise. His chest constricted again, a spasm that nearly brought him to his knees. Sarai's strong arm kept him upright, her black eyes assessing him with a hunter's perception. "You are sick," she stated flatly. "Inside sickness, I see it." Jonas didn't bother denying it. "Yes. Why make journey? Why not stay in your shelter?" He glanced ahead at Maya, who was examining a luminescent fungus with fascination. She needed to go home. Sarai's expression changed, respect replacing curiosity. "Brave. Foolish, but brave." The Verdian hunting camp consisted of 6 small shelters arranged in a circle around a central fire pit. The structures were ingeniously designed, lightweight frames covered with a material that resembled canvas but was clearly plant-derived. The hunters, 12 in total, both male and female, regarded Jonas with undisguised curiosity. Few had encountered a human before, though all knew the stories of the failed colony. Some approached cautiously to touch his pale skin or gray hair, murmuring among themselves. Sarai led him to a shelter on the edge of the camp. "You rest here. I treat your leg." She returned with a poultice of crushed leaves and applied it to his swollen ankle, wrapping it with strips of cloth. The mixture smelled pungent but brought immediate cooling relief. 2 days to heal, enough for walking," she pronounced, "then 2 more days to village." Jonas nodded gratefully. "Thank you." Outside the shelter, he could hear Maya chattering excitedly to the other hunters, no doubt recounting her adventures. Occasionally her voice rose above the others, using English words when the Verdian equivalents escaped her. Sarai settled across from him, cross-legged on the ground. Why you alone, Jonas? Where are other humans? The direct question reopened old wounds, but he owed her honesty. Dead. All dead. The colony ship was damaged during landing. Systems failed. Some died in the crash. Others from injuries, disease, or local hazards. He didn't elaborate on the desperate early attempts to establish agriculture that had led to poisonings, or the ill-fated exploration party that had encountered a herd of territorial herbivores. No one came to find you? Sarai asked. Jonas shook his head. Earth is very far, many light years. The colony was experimental. No rescue mission was planned. So you survive, alone. Yes. But you find Maya. Save her. Why not before? Find us. Learn from us. 20 cycles alone. She shook her head, clearly finding the concept disturbing. Verdians, he had gathered, were deeply communal. I tried in the beginning, Jonas admitted. I approached a hunting party like yours. They were afraid, fired arrows. I decided it was safer to keep my distance. Sarai's expression changed to one of understanding. The ghost hunter clan. They believe outsiders bring death. Not all clans think this way. Before Jonas could respond, Maya burst into the shelter, her face alight with excitement. Jonas, they cook shadow mall meat. You must try. She grabbed his hand, then remembered his injury and stopped. Oh, your leg hurts. I'll be fine, he assured her. Help me up. With Maya on one side and Sarai on the other, Jonas made his way to the central fire. The hunters had prepared the shadow mall meat, skewered on green wood sticks and roasted over open flames. The smell was surprisingly appealing, rich and gamey. One of the hunters, a male with facial markings similar to Sarai's, offered Jonas a portion. He accepted with a nod of thanks and took a cautious bite. The meat was dense and flavorful, similar to venison, but with an unfamiliar spicy undertone. Good? Maya asked anxiously. Very good, Jonas confirmed, taking another bite. The tension in the camp noticeably eased after that shared meal. Several hunters approached with questions, which Maya eagerly translated. How did humans hunt on Earth? What weapons did they use? Were there predators like shadow maws? Jonas answered as best he could, aware that his descriptions of Earth's wildlife and human civilization must sound as alien to them as their world had once seemed to him. As night fell, the hunters gathered around the fire to share stories. Though Jonas couldn't understand most of the words, the cadence and gestures made it clear they were recounting hunting exploits and adventures. Maya sat beside him, occasionally whispering translations of particularly exciting moments. When Sarai gestured to Jonas, indicating it was his turn to contribute, he hesitated. What story could he tell that they would understand or appreciate? He decided on the tale of his first encounter with the massive river serpents the Verdians called water shadows. Using simple words and expansive gestures, he described how he'd accidentally disturbed a nesting female while fishing and had to flee up a cliff face to escape her wrath. Maya translated the parts beyond his limited gestures, her voice rising dramatically at the climax when the serpent nearly caught him. The hunters leaned forward, engrossed, and when he finished, they pounded the ground in what he assumed was their version of applause. As the fire burned low and the Verdians began retiring to their shelters, Maya remained by Jonas's side. She seemed subdued now, her earlier excitement replaced by contemplation. Tomorrow we rest here, Jonas said gently. Then 2 more days to your village. You'll see your family soon. She nodded, but without the enthusiasm he expected. Jonas come to village too? Just to make sure you get home safely. Then what? The question hung between them. Jonas had avoided thinking too far ahead, focusing instead on the immediate goal of returning Maya to her people. Now, faced with her direct query, he found himself uncertain. I'll go back to my hut, I suppose. Maya's face fell. Alone again? It's what I'm used to. She shook her head firmly. Not good. Sarai says alone is slow death for people, Verdian or human. Jonas couldn't argue with that wisdom. The years of solitude had taken their toll, not just physically, but mentally. How many days had passed when he hadn't spoken a single word? How many nights had he lain awake, staring at alien stars, feeling the crushing weight of being the last of his kind on this world? Maybe I'll visit sometimes, he offered, not entirely believing it himself. The journey was long and difficult, more so for his aging body. Maya seemed to sense his insincerity. She placed her small green hand on his arm. Stay with us. Learn our ways. Teach your ways. The simple invitation stirred something long dormant in Jonas's heart. Hope, perhaps, or the recognition of a path not previously considered, not mere survival, but integration. Becoming truly part of this world rather than just an observer. "We'll see," he said, unwilling to make promises he might not keep. "First, let's get you home." The village of the Blue Valley clan nestled between two towering peaks of the Spine Mountains, just as Maya had described. From the ridge where they now stood, Jonas could see a collection of permanent structures, some built of stone and timber, others seeming to grow directly from the living rock of the mountainside. A river smaller than the one near his hut, but clear and swift, cut through the center of the settlement. Verdians moved through the village in orderly patterns, carrying supplies, tending gardens of strange purple plants, and working at various crafts. Maya stood transfixed, her small body trembling with emotion. "Home," she whispered, the single word laden with longing. Jonas placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. 4 days of travel from the hunting camp had taken a toll on him, each step more difficult than the last. The constant pain in his chest had intensified, sometimes stealing his breath entirely. He'd hidden the worst episodes from Maya and Sarai, waiting until night to give in to the coughing fits that increasingly brought up flecks of blood. "We made it," he said, satisfaction overriding his exhaustion. He had fulfilled his promise. Maya would be with her people again. Sarai pointed to a larger structure near the village center. Speaker dwelling, Maya's family there. As they began their descent on toward the village, sentries posted on the outskirts spotted them. Horns sounded, not alarms but announcements of the hunting party's return. Figures emerged from dwellings, gathering to greet the hunters. Jonas felt a tightening in his chest that had nothing to do with his illness. So many people, after so long alone, the weight of their gazes would be difficult to bear. Maya sensed his hesitation. "It will be good," she assured him, though her own voice wavered slightly. After months away, would her family recognize her? Would she still fit into the life she'd left behind? At the village's edge, a delegation awaited them. 5 Verdians with more elaborate markings than the hunters, wearing garments adorned with small, polished stones and feathers that caught the light. Elders or leaders, Jonas guessed. Sarai stepped forward and addressed them formally in the Verdian language, occasionally gesturing toward Jonas and Maya. The leaders listened intently, their expressions shifting from surprise to disbelief to something like wonder. One of the leaders, a female with silver streaks in her head tendrils, stepped forward and knelt before Maya. She spoke softly, her voice breaking on certain words. Even without understanding the language, Jonas recognized the emotion, a mixture of joy and disbelief. Maya released Jonas's hand and stepped hesitantly toward the kneeling figure. "Mother?" she whispered. The Verdian woman opened her arms, and Maya fell into them with a cry that transcended language, the pure sound of a child reunited with her parent. 2 others rushed forward, a male who must have been her father, and a slightly taller boy, clearly her brother. They enveloped her in an embrace, all speaking at once in voices choked with emotion. Jonas stood awkwardly to one side, leaning on the walking staff Sarai had fashioned for him. The reunion before him was both beautiful and painful to witness, a reminder of what he had lost and would never regain. His own family, buried in simple graves near the crash site, would never know he had survived all these years. A spasm of pain shot through his chest, more intense than any before. He staggered slightly, catching himself on the staff before anyone noticed. Not now, he thought desperately. Let me see this through completely. The silver-streaked female, Maya's mother, finally looked up from her daughter and fixed those black eyes on Jonas. She said something to Sarai, who translated. She asked if you truly saved Maya from River, if you healed her wounds, taught her your words. Jonas nodded uncomfortably. I did what anyone would do. When Sarai translated this, a murmur ran through the gathered crowd. Maya's mother rose and approached Jonas slowly. He remained still, unsure of the protocol. She stopped before him and placed both hands on his shoulders, a gesture that required her to reach up as he stood taller than most Verdians. Then she pressed her forehead to his chest in what was clearly a gesture of deep respect or gratitude. Words flowed from her in the musical Verdian language. Jonas looked to Sarai for translation. She says, you have returned her heart to her body, that no gift can repay this debt, that you will be known in Blue Valley stories forever as the one who brings back. Jonas felt his face flush with embarrassment. Tell her no debt exists. Maya gave me something too, companionship when I had none. After Sarai translated, Maya's mother stepped back and gestured toward the village center. She invites you to feast, to rest, to be honored. Jonas glanced at Maya, who had not left her family's embrace, but watched him anxiously. He nodded. I accept with gratitude. The procession into the village center became something of a spectacle. Children ran alongside them, staring openly at Jonas's pale skin and strange features. Adults whispered among themselves, some reaching out to touch him briefly as if confirming his reality. Maya broke from her family group and fell into step beside Jonas. They never seen human before, she explained. Only stories of colony time. Am I what they expected? Jonas asked, self-conscious under the scrutiny. Maya considered this seriously. Stories say humans taller, stronger, with fire weapons and machines that fly. She glanced up at him. You different, more real. Jonas understood. The colonists, with their technology and military protection, must have seemed like mythical beings to the Verdians. He, in his weathered clothes and with his handmade tools, presented a more comprehensible figure. They arrived at a circular stone platform in the village center. Food was already being prepared, large cooking fires, skewered meats, vessels of fermented beverages. The Verdians clearly intended this to be a significant celebration. One of the elders approached, a male with deeply etched facial markings and a dignified bearing. I am Callan, he said in surprisingly good English, lead elder of Blue Valley clan. Sarai says you speak our trading tongue. Jonas nodded, stunned to hear his native language from a Verdian. Some words, not many. I learned from human traders before stars fall, Callan explained, referring to what must have been the colony ship's arrival. Long ago, remember most. Your English is good, Jonas acknowledged. Callan made a gesture of modest dismissal. Come, sit, honor place. He led Jonas to a raised stone seat draped with soft furs, clearly a position of distinction at the gathering. As Jonas settled onto the seat, mindful of his worsening condition, Callan remained standing beside him. Why you help Maya? The elder asked bluntly. Human and Verdian not always friends. She needed help, Jonas replied simply. I could give it. Callan studied him with those unreadable black eyes. Many humans before, they take, not give. Cut trees, dig earth, drive away hunt beasts. Jonas winced at the reminder of the colony's early missteps, the aggressive resource extraction that had damaged local ecosystems and likely contributed to the natives' hostility. We didn't understand your world, he admitted. We made mistakes. But you learn? Jonas nodded slowly. 20 years alone teaches many lessons. This world doesn't yield to force. It requires patience, observation, respect. A slow smile spread across Callan's face, revealing teeth that came to slight points. An evolutionary adaptation Jonas had noticed in Maya as well, likely for their partially carnivorous diet. Good words, the elder pronounced. Wisdom words. He raised his voice, addressing the gathered crowd in their native tongue. When he finished, a cheer rose up. Sarai appeared at Jonas's other side. He says you speak with the voice of a true elder, that perhaps humans can learn wisdom after all. The feast began in earnest then. Jonas found himself served the choicest portions of unfamiliar meats and fruits. Some he recognized from his own foraging. Others were new to him. The fermented beverage, served in carved wooden cups, had a pleasant, honey-like taste that warmed his body and temporarily dulled the constant ache in his joints and chest. Maya divided her time between her blood family and Jonas, clearly determined that neither should feel neglected. She translated stories and questions, facilitating a cultural exchange that grew increasingly animated as the night progressed and inhibitions faded. Jonas found himself recounting tales of Earth, its varied landscapes, animals, and cultures. The Verdians listened with rapt attention, particularly to descriptions of oceans, which their mountainous region lacked. In turn, they shared their own history and legends, which Callan or Maya translated. Tell of water shadows, Maya prompted, her eyes bright with excitement. How you escaped Big Mother. Jonas chuckled. That's a story that makes me look foolish, not brave. Best stories often are, Callan observed with surprising insight. Thus encouraged, Jonas described his encounter with the massive river serpents the Verdians called water shadows. Using simple words and expansive gestures, he recounted how he'd accidentally disturbed a nesting female while fishing and had to flee up a cliff face to escape her wrath. I was new to this world then, he explained. I didn't know the signs of a nesting site, the arranged stones, the peculiar smell. I waded right in, spear ready, thinking only of my next meal. The hunters leaned forward, engrossed in the tale. They knew the dangers of water shadows all too well. The water exploded, Jonas continued, mimicking the eruption with his hands. A wall of scales and teeth. I'd never seen anything so big, so fast. My spear bounced off her hide like a twig. Maya translated the parts beyond his limited gestures, her voice rising dramatically as she described the serpent's fury. The assembled Verdians pounded the ground in what Jonas now recognized as their version of applause when he described his desperate scramble up the cliff face, the serpent snapping at his heels until he reached a height she couldn't follow. 3 days I stayed on that ledge, Jonas concluded, too afraid to climb down. When I finally did, I carried 5 stones as tribute and left them at the water's edge. I've never fished that bend again. When Maya finished translating, the Verdians erupted in ground-pounding and trilling calls of appreciation. Kalen nodded approvingly. You learn River Mother Law, he said. 5 stones for 5 eggs, balance restored. Jonas blinked in surprise. I didn't know the meaning, it felt right. Instinct sometimes wiser than knowledge, Kalen observed. You listen to world voice. As the celebration continued, Jonas felt his strength ebbing. The combination of the journey, the intense social interaction after so long alone, and his advancing illness drained his reserves. A coughing fit seized him, and though he tried to suppress it, the spasms wouldn't be denied. Maya was at his side instantly, concern etched on her features. Jonas sick, she said, not a question but a statement. Just tired, he managed between coughs. The journey was long. She placed a small hand on his chest, feeling the irregular rhythm beneath. Her black eyes met his, and he saw understanding there. She had probably known for some time, that his illness was serious. Our healers help, she insisted, turning to speak rapidly to her mother. Jonas caught Kalen's eye. The elder was watching him with an evaluative gaze that missed nothing. You hide sickness, Kalen stated flatly. Wait, Maya needed to get home, Jonas replied simply. My problems could wait. Brave, Kalen acknowledged, but time runs short for you now. Jonas couldn't deny it. Yes. Maya's mother approached, accompanied by an older female Viridian, with intricate patterns tattooed on her arms rather than raised scarification. The newcomer carried a small wooden box inlaid with polished stones. This Marina, Maya introduced her, best healer in Blue Valley. The healer set her box beside Jonas and opened it, revealing compartments filled with powders, dried plants, and small clay containers of liquids. Without preamble, she placed a hand on Jonas's forehead, then pressed her ear to his chest, listening to his labored breathing and irregular heartbeat. She spoke at length to Maya's mother, who translated through Kalen. She says your life drum beats wrong pattern. Your breath rivers narrow. These can be helped for time, but not cured. Jonas nodded. I suspected as much. The healer selected several ingredients from her box, grinding dried leaves with a mortar and pestle, adding drops from 2 different vials. The resulting paste gave off a sharp, mentholated scent. She gestured for Jonas to remove his shirt, then applied the mixture to his chest in a circular pattern. Almost immediately, Jonas felt a warming sensation that spread outward from the application points. His breathing eased slightly, the tightness in his chest receding to a dull pressure rather than the vice grip constriction he'd grown accustomed to. Better? Maya asked anxiously. Yes, Jonas acknowledged with surprise. Much better. Marina prepared a second mixture, this one a tea brewed from roots and berries. The liquid was bitter but not unpleasant, with an aftertaste like cinnamon. She mimed drinking it twice daily, which Maya translated. For strength, Maya explained, not cure but help pain. Kalen spoke again. You need rest now. Guest dwelling prepared. The elder led them to a small but comfortable structure near the village center. Inside, furs had been arranged into a sleeping pallet, and a small fire burned in a central pit, venting through a clever chimney system. Sleep well, Jonas, who brings back, Kalen said formally. Tomorrow we talk more. Left alone, Jonas sank gratefully onto the sleeping furs. His body ached, but the healer's treatments had provided more relief than he'd felt in months. Perhaps he would have longer than he'd feared. Not a cure, but time. Time to see Maya settled. Time to learn more about this culture he'd avoided for 2 decades. He had just begun to drift towards sleep when the dwelling's entrance covering rustled. Maya slipped inside, her face serious in the dim firelight. Should you not be with your family? Jonas asked gently. I am, she replied simply, settling beside him. But I worry for you. I'm just tired, little one. The journey was long. She shook her head. Not that. I see how you breathe. Harder than before. How you hold your side when you think no one watches. Jonas sighed. The child missed nothing. He'd been hiding the symptoms as best he could. The increasing shortness of breath, the pain in his chest that came and went, the occasional dizziness. At first, he'd attributed it to age and the rigors of travel. Now he suspected something more serious. I'm old, Maya, bodies wear out. But healers can help, she insisted. Our medicine women know many plants, many treatments. Jonas smiled sadly. Some things can't be fixed, not by your medicine or mine. Maya's eyes filled with silver tears. You knew, before we left your hut. You knew you were sick. He couldn't lie to her. I suspected. It's why I was so determined to bring you home quickly. So I wouldn't be alone when you die, she whispered. The brutal truth laid bare. Jonas winced at her directness but nodded. Yes. She was silent for a long moment, processing this. Then with the resilience of youth, she straightened her shoulders. Then we make remaining time good. You stay here. Learn our ways, be part of clan. The offer touched him deeply. Maya? No arguments, she cut him off with a gesture eerily reminiscent of her mother. Already spoken with elders. They agree. You have place here, if you want it. Jonas felt a tightness in his throat that had nothing to do with his illness. I would be honored, he managed. Satisfied, Maya curled up beside him, much as she had during their journey. Sleep now. Tomorrow, I show you everything. Spring turned to summer, and summer began its slow transition toward the cooler season. Jonas remained in the village, his health declining gradually but his spirit flourishing. The Verdians accepted him with a mixture of curiosity and respect, incorporating him into their daily lives with surprising ease. He taught them what he could of human knowledge, improved fishing techniques, methods for preserving food, basic principles of metallurgy that helped them strengthen their tools. In return, they showed him their ways, sustainable hunting practices, medicinal plants he'd never discovered in his solitary explorations, and most importantly, their communal way of life. Maya spent every day with him when not engaged in her lessons with the clan's teachers. She had appointed herself his personal interpreter and cultural guide, taking the responsibility with characteristic seriousness. Under her tutelage, Jonas's grasp of the Verdian language improved steadily, though certain sounds remained beyond his human vocal capabilities. On a clear autumn morning, Jonas sat outside his dwelling, soaking in the sunlight. His breathing had grown more labored in recent weeks, and movement caused him increasing pain. The Verdian healers had concocted teas and poultices that helped somewhat, but could not halt the inevitable. A commotion at the village entrance drew his attention. Hunters were returning, but their pace was urgent, their calls alerting rather than celebratory. Jonas watched as they gathered around Halen, gesturing animatedly toward the mountains. Even from a distance, he could see the concern on the elder's face. Maya appeared from her family's dwelling, quickly crossing to where Jonas sat. Trouble, she announced without preamble. Ghost Hunter clans seen in Valley. Many warriors. Ghost Hunters? The clan that hates outsiders? She nodded grimly. They hear of you. Say Blue Valley clan corrupted by human presence. Her expression darkened. Say you must go, or they attack. Jonas felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. In his weakened state, a journey back to his hut was impossible. But staying might bring war to the people who had welcomed him. I should leave, he said, struggling to his feet. I won't be the cause of conflict between your people. No, Maya protested fiercely. You too sick for journey. Ghost hunters just want excuse for fight. They jealous of Blue Valley hunting grounds for many seasons. Maya is right, came Kalen's voice as the elder approached. This not about you only. Old rivalries. Ghost hunters use you as reason, not true cause. Jonas looked between them, unconvinced. How many warriors? 20, Kalen replied, with bone bows and poison darts. And how many can Blue Valley field? 15 hunters with bows, Kalen admitted. Others with spears, knives. But we not seek battle. Jonas nodded, thinking rapidly despite his illness. Is there a way to settle this without fighting? A challenge or contest? Some tradition both clans would respect? Kalen's expression changed from concern to thoughtful consideration. Trial of merit, he said slowly. Old way. When clans dispute, champions face 3 challenges. Winning clans' claim stands. Would the ghost hunters accept this? They follow old ways strictly, Kalen acknowledged. would be dishonorable to refuse. Then that's your answer, Jonas said. Challenge them to a trial of merit. Maya tugged at his sleeve anxiously. But ghost hunters choose first challenge, always pick their strength. So prepare your best hunters, Jonas suggested. Surely Blue Valley has skills the ghost hunters can't match. Kalen nodded slowly. Talon, Maya's brother, best climb hunter in 3 clans. And Sarai, best bow shot. He glanced at Jonas speculatively. But third champion must be clan-connected outsider. Old rule. The implication was clear. Jonas shook his head. I can barely walk across the village. I'd be no champion. Not with body, Kalen agreed. With mind. Third challenge often riddle match or knowledge test. And if I lose? The elder met his gaze steadily. Then ghost hunters take you, do what they will. Jonas absorbed this with grim understanding. The ghost hunters would not be kind to a human in their power. And if I win, you stay. Ghost hunters leave Blue Valley territory. No return for full cycle of seasons. It was a desperate gamble, but the alternative seemed worse. Either abandoning the Blue Valley clan to conflict or attempting a journey that would likely kill him before he reached his hut. I'll do it, Jonas decided. When? Tomorrow, Kalen replied, at Joining Stones, neutral ground between territories. Maya looked stricken. Jonas too sick for challenge. Jonas took her hand. I won't let them hurt your people because of me. Better to face one challenge than cause a war. Tears welled in her black eyes, but she recognized the determination in his face. Then I help prepare, she said firmly, all night if needed. The village transformed into a hive of activity. Weapons were sharpened, champions prepared, strategies discussed. Jonas sat with the elders, learning everything they could tell him about Ghost Hunter clan customs, riddles, and knowledge traditions. They favor tests of survival lore, Kalen explained, plant identification, weather prediction, hunting strategy. All things I've had to master to survive 20 years alone, Jonas noted. Yes, but different from our ways sometimes. Ghost hunters use poison more, set traps, less, honor in hunt. By evening, runners returned with news. The ghost hunters had accepted the trial of merit, naming their 3 champions, all battle-hardened hunters with fearsome reputations. The challenges would be endurance swimming across the cold mountain lake, climbing the sheer cliff face of Thunder Rock, and a test of wilderness knowledge. Swimming and climbing, Jonas mused. Physical challenges your champions can win. Kalen nodded. Talon climbed Thunder Rock since child. Sarai strong swimmer, trained in cold waters. His expression remained troubled. But knowledge test worries. Ghost hunters choose questions. They'll try to ask things only they would know, Jonas realized, to ensure I fail. Yes, but trial rules say questions must be answerable by any who truly know land and its ways. Maya, who had been listening quietly, suddenly perked up. Jonas knows things ghost hunters never learn. Different way to see world. That's true, Jonas acknowledged. But will that help with their questions? Maybe not, Maya admitted, but... She hesitated, then rushed on. What if you ask question they cannot answer? Turn challenge back. Kalen's eyes widened. Clever thinking. Old stories tell of champions who won by making challengers fail their own test. Is that allowed? Jonas asked. Not forbidden, Kalen replied with the ghost of a smile. Trial rules very old, very specific. That night, as the village prepared for the coming trial, Jonas sat with Maya and her family in their dwelling. Despite the healer's best efforts, his condition had worsened with the day's stress. Each breath came with effort, and occasionally his vision would blur, the world swimming before him. You should rest, Maya's mother urged, seeing his exhaustion. Soon, Jonas promised. But first I need to understand everything about these ghost hunters, their weaknesses, their blind spots. Maya's father, a quiet man named Dalen, who had until now kept a respectful distance, spoke up. They know only their way, see only one path, this their greatest weakness. They've never left their territory, Jonas asked. Never crossed great water, Dalen confirmed. Fear ocean spirits. Stories say ancestors crossed water to come here, met great danger. Now forbidden journey. Jonas filed this information away. And what about the stars? Do they have star knowledge? Dalen and his wife exchanged glances. Only basic navigation, he replied, not like Blue Valley star counters. By midnight, Jonas had formulated his strategy. It was risky, based on assumptions about ghost hunter knowledge limitations, but it was the best chance he had. Finally, he allowed Maya to help him back to his dwelling, where he collapsed onto his sleeping furs, his body demanding the rest his mind had been denying it. Will it work? Maya asked, her voice small in the darkness. I don't know, Jonas admitted, but it's our best chance. If fails, she couldn't finish the sentence. If it fails, you must promise not to blame yourself, Jonas said firmly. This was my choice. She was silent for a long moment. I promise, she finally whispered, but will not fail, cannot fail. Dawn broke clear and cold. The village gathered as Talon, Sarai, and Jonas prepared for the journey to Joining Stones. Jonas had been given a staff carved with Blue Valley clan symbols, marking him as their champion despite his outsider status. His illness made each step an ordeal, but he refused the offer to be carried. A champion should walk to his trial, no matter how slowly. The Joining Stones, a circular arrangement of massive boulders, stood in a valley between Blue Valley territory and the Ghost Hunters' lands. When Jonas and the Blue Valley contingent arrived, the Ghost Hunters were already waiting, their bodies adorned with bones and their skin painted with jagged red patterns. Their leader, a tall Verdian with a scar running from eye to jaw, stepped forward. Blue Valley brings sick human as champion? He sneered in heavily accented English. Insult to trial, Kalen replied calmly. Jonas, who brings back, is clan friend, proven in wisdom. Trial rules allow. The Ghost Hunter leader spat on the ground but did not challenge the assertion further. Instead, he gestured to the lake that bordered the trial grounds. First challenge begins, swimming test. Talon stepped forward, removing his outer garments until he wore only a simple loincloth. The Ghost Hunter champion did the same. Both approached the lake's edge, where mist rose from the frigid water. Cross to far shore and return, announced an elder from each clan simultaneously. First to return wins. At a signal, both swimmers plunged into the lake. The Ghost Hunter took an early lead, his powerful strokes cutting through the water. But Talon paced himself, maintaining a steady rhythm. By the halfway point, as they touched the far shore, the Ghost Hunter's pace had slowed, while Talon seemed to find new energy. On the return journey, Talon steadily pulled ahead, reaching the shore a full body length before his opponent. The Blue Valley clan erupted in cheers. First challenge won. The Ghost Hunters muttered among themselves but raised no protest. Their leader pointed to the sheer cliff face that rose behind the stones. Climbing test. Sarai stepped forward, as did a wiry Ghost Hunter with unusually long fingers. The rules were explained. Reach the red-marked stone near the top, retrieve the token placed there, and return to ground. Speed and safety both counted. The Ghost Hunter began first, scrambling up the cliff face with impressive speed, finding invisible holds in the rock. Sarai followed more deliberately, testing each handhold before committing her weight. For a time, it seemed the Ghost Hunter would easily win, reaching the marker stone far ahead of Sarai. But as he stretched for the token, his foot slipped. He caught himself, but in his haste to recover, dislodged a shower of small stones. One struck him in the eye, momentarily blinding him. He clung to the cliff face, unable to see clearly enough to continue. Sarai, meanwhile, maintained her steady pace. When she reached the marker stone, she secured the token, then, to the astonishment of both clans, climbed across to the struggling Ghost Hunter. She offered him her water skin, helping him clear his vision before continuing her descent. The Ghost Hunter followed more slowly, humbled by both his failure and Sarai's unexpected aid. When both reached the ground, Sarai presented her token, winning the second challenge but earning grudging respect from the Ghost Hunters for her actions. 2 challenges won by Blue Valley, Kalen announced formally. By trial law, final challenge still required. The Ghost Hunter leader nodded stiffly, his earlier contempt somewhat tempered. He gestured to Jonas. Knowledge test for human champion. Jonas stepped forward, leaning heavily on his staff. The effort of standing sent waves of pain through his chest, but he kept his expression neutral. Showing weakness now would only embolden his opponent. The Ghost Hunter Knowledge Champion was an older Verdian with elaborate facial markings and a necklace of small animal skulls. He produced a leather pouch and from it withdrew 3 dried leaves, 3 small bones, and a handful of pebbles. Identify these, he demanded. Name plant, animal, and stone type. Tell uses and dangers. Jonas examined each item carefully. The leaves came from plants he'd encountered during his years of survival. 1 medicinal, 1 poisonous, 1 edible. The bones belonged to local wildlife he'd hunted or observed. The stones were common types found throughout the region. Methodically, he identified each item, explaining its properties and uses. The Ghost Hunter champion's expression remained impassive, But Jonas noted the slight widening of his eyes at the depth of knowledge displayed. When Jonas finished, the ghost hunter nodded reluctantly. Human knows surface things, he acknowledged. Now answer question of deeper knowing. When great storm comes from western mountains, but eastern sky shows red morning, what happens to valley game trails? A murmur ran through both clans. This was no simple identification, but a test of complex ecological understanding specific to this region. Jonas considered carefully, drawing on 20 years of observation and survival. The game moves to southern slopes, he answered finally. Western storms bring cold winds, but eastern red sky means dry air from plains. Valley becomes wind tunnel. Animals seek shelter and warmth on southern faces, where trees block wind but sun still reaches. The ghost hunter champion's face betrayed his surprise. The answer was correct. One more question, he said, voice hardening. When river serpent leaves nest but eggs not yet hatched, what sign shows on water surface? Jonas hesitated. He'd observed river serpents, but never during their breeding cycle. This was knowledge he lacked, precisely the trap Maya had warned about. The ghost hunter smiled, sensing victory. Human cannot answer. Trial failed. Wait, Jonas said, summoning his remaining strength. Trial rules say questions must be answerable by any who truly know the land. But there is another rule, is there not? Knowledge champion must prove his own answer correct. Mutters spread through both clans. Jonas had invoked an obscure but valid aspect of the trial. How would Ghost Hunter Champion prove this answer? Jonas pressed. Have you observed this yourself? Or is it story knowledge passed down, not proven by own eyes? The Ghost Hunter Champion's expression darkened, but he did not respond. I will answer a different question, Jonas continued, pressing his advantage. One that any who truly know this world can answer, if they have watched with open eyes and mind. He raised his arm, pointing to the sky. This world orbits its sun, as your legends say the ancestors knew. We stand on a great sphere, not a flat plane. I asked the Ghost Hunter Champion, why does the shadow of this world on its largest moon appear curved during the red eclipse? And why does it move from left to right during some seasons, right to left during others? Absolute silence fell over the gathering. The Ghost Hunter Champion stared at Jonas, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to alarm. This was a question that required understanding of astronomical principles. Knowledge the ghost hunters, with their limited territory and rigid traditions, had never developed. This not fair question, the ghost hunter leader protested, not about survival or hunting. It is about truly knowing the world, Kalen countered. Your champion claimed deeper knowing. Rules say champion must answer or forfeit. The ghost hunter champion looked to his leader, clearly lost. After a tense silence, he lowered his eyes. I cannot answer. Then I will, Jonas said, his voice strengthening despite his failing body. The shadow is curved because this world is round. It moves in different directions because this world's axis tilts as it orbits the sun. Simple truth, observable by any who study the skies with care. He turned to address both clans. Your ancestors knew these things. They crossed the great void between stars. They understood worlds as spheres in motion. This knowledge belongs to all who truly see, not just to humans or to any single clan. A murmur of appreciation ran through the Blue Valley Verdians. Even some of the ghost hunters looked thoughtful, particularly the younger ones. The ghost hunter leader conferred briefly with his elders, then straightened. Trial complete, he announced formally. Blue Valley wins 3 challenges. Our warriors will leave your territory until next great cold season. As the ghost hunters prepared to depart, their knowledge champion approached Jonas. How you learn sky truth? He asked quietly. By watching, Jonas replied simply. By questioning what I saw. By remembering that there is always more to learn. The ghost hunter nodded slowly. Perhaps Ghost Hunter Clan look up more often now. With that small victory, perhaps more meaningful than the trial itself, the confrontation ended. The Blue Valley clan escorted their champions home in celebration, but Jonas's triumph was short-lived. The exertion had drained his remaining reserves. By the time they reached the village, he could barely stand. Maya and Talon had to support him to his dwelling, where the healers immediately attended him. You won, Maya said, her voice thick with emotion. Ghost Hunter's gone. You safe now. Jonas managed a weak smile. For now, but they'll return eventually. Your people should prepare. We'll prepare, she promised. We'll learn to watch stars better too. That night, as the village celebrated their victory, Jonas felt the end approaching. His breathing grew more labored, each heartbeat more irregular than the last. Maya refused to join the celebration, remaining by his side despite her parents' gentle attempts to convince her otherwise. "You should be with your people," Jonas told her, enjoying the victory. "You are my people too," she replied stubbornly. "First father lost in river. Second father stays with me until stars call." The simple declaration broke something open in Jonas's heart. For 20 years he had been defined by what he'd lost: his mission, his fellow colonists, his family. Now at the end, he was defined by what he'd found: a child of another species who called him father, a people who accepted him despite his differences, a purpose beyond mere survival. "Maya," he whispered, his voice failing, "promise me something." "Anything," she replied instantly. "If humans come again, and they will someday, help them understand. Show them a better way than we found the first time." "I promise," she said solemnly. "We'll be bridge, like you." Jonas nodded, satisfaction warming him even as his body grew colder. "Good," he managed. "That's good." Maya held his hand as his breathing slowed. Outside, the sounds of celebration gradually quieted, as if the village sensed what was happening in the small dwelling. The night deepened, stars appearing in the clear sky, visible through the smoke hole above. "Look," Jonas whispered, using his last strength to point upward. "Third star from left, in that cluster. That's where Earth is. My first home." Maya followed his gaze. "We'll remember," she promised. "We'll watch that star." Jonas smiled. "Both my worlds in good hands now." His hand went slack in hers, his chest stilled. Maya made a keening sound, a Verdian expression of grief rarely heard from one so young. The funeral followed Verdian tradition, with elements adapted to honor Jonas's human heritage. His body was placed on a platform high in the branches of a singing tree, where it would return to the world naturally. Maya insisted on adding a small pouch containing earth soil, collected from the original colony site during an expedition led by Sarai's hunters. The entire clan gathered beneath the tree to share memories and honor his life. Stories were told of his wisdom, his courage, and the unlikely friendship that had changed both human and Verdian forever. When the formal ceremony ended, Maya remained behind. Now recognized as Jonas's daughter in spirit, if not blood, she had been granted the right to the final farewell. She climbed nimbly to the platform and placed beside his body the project they had begun but never finished. Parchments covered with their two languages, telling the story of a man who had crossed the stars only to find his true home in an alien child's trust. "Journey well, father of my spirit," she whispered in English, the language that had first connected them. "I will keep my promise." 20 years later, a light appeared in the night sky, bright enough to be visible even in daylight. The Verdians watched it with wonder and some trepidation as it grew larger over several days. Maya, now a respected hunter and voice in the council, recognized it for what it was: a ship from Earth, similar to the one that had brought Jonas decades earlier. When it landed on the plains beyond the forest, she led the delegation that went to meet it. Unlike the first contact generations before, this meeting would begin with understanding rather than fear. She carried with her Jonas's journal and the record they had created together, a guide to this world and its people, written by one who had loved both Earth and this planet. As the ship's door opened and the first explorers emerged, Maya stepped forward. In clear, precise English, she greeted them. "Welcome to our world. I have a story to tell you about a man named Jonas, who came before and showed us how different peoples can become family." The humans stared in shocked silence at this green-skinned being speaking their language. Then their leader removed her helmet and stepped forward with cautious hope. "We are seeking traces of a lost colony," she said. "The last transmission we received mentioned a man named Jonas Turner. Do you know of him?" Maya smiled, tears gleaming in her black eyes. "I know him well. He saved me from a river when I was a child. He brought me home. He became my second father." She held out the journal. "This is his legacy, the last trace of your colony and the first chapter of our shared future." The human leader accepted the journal with trembling hands. As she opened it to the first page, her eyes widened at the familiar handwriting. "When different worlds meet," she read aloud, "they can destroy each other through fear or strengthen each other through understanding. I found my answer in the trust of a child. May you find yours in the wisdom of her people."